So just if everyone's okay with that, we will be recording the session for those who couldn't make it today. Hi, I'm Kimberly Rosenfeld. I am the Education Department Chair at Cerritos. I also am housed in the Communication Studies Department. And so I've been involved with Teacher Track since its inception at Cerritos College. So since 1999. So I'm so happy to be here and to share some insights with you today. I'm going to pass it on to Rebecca now from Cal State Long Beach.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. My name is Rebecca Bustamante, and I'm one of the Associate Deans in the College of Education here at Cal State Long Beach. And I am in charge of supporting our credentialing and teacher education programs in the college, as well as support our community partnerships and community outreach. And I am in my third year here at Cal State Long Beach, and I have had the privilege of coming into this extremely well-established partnership with Cerritos College, and been very fortunate to be able to work with Cerritos College in their established teacher track, and we'll look forward to sharing with you some of the ways that we're sustaining and growing this partnership as a model. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the rationale for or the importance of establishing partnerships and teacher preparation. And we'll share some examples and some history with you, but we also want to give an opportunity for this to be interactive as we look at challenges and opportunities in exploring partnerships and strengthening partnerships. So one of the main reasons that we believe that community college and CSU partnerships are really key in the state of California is that we serve the same students. Our students are typically first generation. Many of them could be considered non-traditional in that they have many commitments outside of college, commitments to work and family that make it particularly challenging for them to stay on track and meet all the requirements of becoming a teacher. And then we know that we're aware of the 2019 master plan that was laid out between our two systems to actually look for ways and spell out ways that we should be collaborating around teacher preparation. We also think that by fortifying relationships between community colleges and the CSU is the best way for us to meet the state need for teachers. We know that the CSU system produces maybe not the right word, sounds a little like a factory, but prepares the most teachers in the state. And at CSULB, we have one of the largest teacher preparation programs in the state, particularly in our single subjects program is particularly large. Another thing is that as we interact with our various community college partners, we realize that there are a lot of really great things going on in very disparate and ways that don't necessarily come together and pull on the synergy and strengths that are possibilities to actually strengthen the way that we work together to actually produce excellent teachers in the state of California. Another thing that frequent interaction and collaboration between our community college partners and CSUs is that I like to think of it in terms of the old mirrors and lenses opportunities for improvement. So not only do we find out the different projects and grants and programs that are going on so that we can put that jigsaw together, but we also can find out where the problems are and magnify them so that we can actually put a mirror on ourselves as CSUs and identify areas for improvement by identifying barriers, in particular with transfer students, with the communication to students and making sure students are being properly advised throughout the whole pathway to teacher education. And so I can say that in working closely with our liberal studies department chair and with Cerritos College, we've been able to identify glitches along the way where there may be some inconsistencies in admissions or requirements. And we're trying to remove those barriers as much as we can. And it takes some humility on our part to put the mirror on ourselves and make it about what we need to do to improve. Okay. And we can't know unless we have folks tell us and take that input. Okay. So one of the main ways that we partner across the CSUs really began with our integrated teacher education preparation program, or the ITEP, which is basically gives liberal studies students the opportunity to obtain a bachelor's degree and graduate with a teaching credential after the 5th year. Typically, undergraduates can apply to the ITEP pathway between 60 and 90 units. I'm going to say 60 to 90 because it may vary with transfer students that are coming from the community colleges. But we often also have across the CSUs many opportunities for residency programs. We have an urban dual credential program, for example, in our college, which allows students to actually obtain both a special education and a multiple subjects credential simultaneously, while also working in schools while they take their methods classes. And so this CSU option of the ITEP actually started at the same time that the Cerritos College Teacher Track program was initiated. And so because of that, we've really had some opportunities to align our efforts structurally and trying to support students that are interested in becoming teachers by trying to capture their attention early on in the community colleges. So I'm going to turn it over to Colleen to give some background information on the Teacher Track program at Cerritos.
All right, so I'm going to just jump into a quick history lesson, but I want to do a disclaimer before doing this because we've done several partnership presentations with Cal State Long Beach because we are fortunate to have such a rich history together. And so the history lesson is really more about just some of those components that are important because we probably have a variety of different folks in the room. I mean, you can tell from the chat that we have a lot of different roles, but we may have colleges here that have very tight relationships with their CSU or UC or private partners, or maybe you're just beginning. And so trying to differentiate for all of those different situations, we thought we'd walk through that. But I also want to say that the world and teacher prep is much different now than it was 21, 22 years ago when all of this began. And so you kind of have to think about, okay, given the context that we're in right now, how do we utilize this information to not only ramp up our own partnership, but I was pretty inspired this morning in listening to the panel that we were having very candid conversations about those barriers. And the mirror and lens idea that Rebecca was just mentioning, you know, that this partnership between Cerritos College and Cal State Long Beach has persisted over time, but it takes tending. And now we have multiple universities that our students go to. And so that is challenging for the community college to be partnering separately. So I hope that in our discussions today that we will continue with this idea that was inspired this morning with really taking a look at and digging into how do we form these partnerships? How do we move forward with these goals that we all identified this morning? So The quick history lesson is that Teacher Track started because we had two people in power that were willing to partner. And so if you remember, there was class size reduction implemented in the late 90s, and there just became a huge need for teachers. And so the president of Cal State Long Beach and the president of Cerritos College at the time decided, you know what, we can build a partnership that will help feed that pipeline by collaborating around an ITEP program so that students that are coming through the community college could also finish their pathway in 4 years. And so I like to think of it, even though I wasn't part of it, this was done before my time at Cerritos College, that it was like the perfect storm happened and the perfect people got into place. And then those two leaders tasked talented people to collaborate and partner around the development of the Cal State Long Beach pathway, but it allowed our community college faculty to come alongside them and plan a program in coordination. And so that is how Teacher Track was born. And then that talented faculty at Cerritos College, my predecessor, the director of Teacher Track, the OG director, as I like to refer to her, Parsons, was part of that. And she and her colleagues at the time really spent time making sure that there was a stakeholder understanding of what this program was. So that required K-12 involvement. It involved conversations with the superintendents. It required the president supporting the faculty in campus awareness and having discussions so that students could be recruited into the program. And so really, when I say that it took two leaders and people in power to start it, we all know that when your boss says to do something, it gets done. And so I'm just wanting to highlight the importance of leaders supporting this work, because wherever the power is really focused is where the resources and the attention is done. And we were very fortunate that at that time we had two leaders that invested in that. So that is how Teacher Track started. And it was only the elementary pathway at the time. And since then, Eisenhower funding was used to do professional development between K-12 teachers and faculty. The program was successful in
listening right now.
NSF money to expand to a secondary pathway. And in its current state, Teacher Track has early childhood, elementary, single subject, as well as CTE. And so over time it's grown, and I can't also sell how important it is that the institution itself, Cerritos College, has institutionalized this program. So it sits in a department. We have a director, we have release time for faculty, some of which is soft money, some of which is institutional. But at the end of the day, partnership is more than just two people wanting to collaborate. It's really about managing all of those pieces. I don't know why that one was right there. I thought we'd moved that. So Rebecca talked a bit about the CSU perspective, and I just wanted to say a few words about the community college perspective. And that is that we started the panel this morning with how do we diversify our classrooms, and how do we have our students really see themselves in the representation in our classrooms. And early on in the development of this partnership, Cal State Long Beach has always really prioritized the fact that we know students from the community come through a community college program. And when you think about our disproportionately impacted populations, many start college not able to go right to a four-year college. At the time, developmental education courses were required, and really most of our students in Teacher Track started at the lowest math level, for instance, or the lowest English level. And so we were able to, as a community college, take students and get them through that developmental education, but then prepare them for that transfer. And without that critical component our CSU partner would not receive, or our UC partners, or even some of the privates that the students transferred to, these things would not have occurred. And so that is why it's so important to involve community colleges. And when they hit on all of those things this morning, some of you I know may not have been able to hear the panel discussion, but the moral imperative is that if we're going to diversify our classrooms, we need to work within the community, and the community college is the place to do that. But it does not come without its challenges. And I apologize because the slides are in a different order than I expected them to be in. But from the community college perspective, and going with this mirror and lens idea, these are some things within our partnership that are unintentional barriers that we experience. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that they're there, but also at the foundation of things, the way that you can best acknowledge those is that you have to have trust in your partner. So Rebecca and I, for example, since we're both newer to our jobs, decided to carve out time on a monthly basis to meet, because it just forced us to meet. Because if we all wait until the perfect time to meet, we never will. We all have full-time jobs, and more than full-time jobs. So carving out that time was important, but then it's also really important that we have positive presuppositions about the things that we're discussing. And so, she may talk to me about challenges that are she's experiencing from something that Cerritos College is working on, or vice versa. And that relationship is key, because unless you really have that professional relationship with someone, you're not going to be able to dig into those type of conversations and really make change without being willing to hold up that mirror and that lens. So time is always going to be a barrier. So really think about, how do you make time or force time? Resources are a barrier. I came to Cerritos College from 22 years in the K-12 system, and I was shocked at just the differences between how the two systems work, and how we got things done in K-12 is different than how you get things done at community colleges, which is also different than how you get things done at CSU. And when I say resources, I just mean that people don't have faculty, for instance, can't just meet all the time, right? A lot of this work requires additional time, possibly release time. If you're really going to dig in and collaborate on curriculum or develop a pathway, it takes more than just a brief meeting once a month to do those things. And so resources are necessary to provide those things. From the community college perspective, a lack of continuity across the CSU campuses is a huge barrier to our students. And then also it impacts time and resources for us as well. And what I mean by that is just the example is the subject matter waiver requirements are different from CSU campus to CSU campus. And so when a community college student starts and they have to do an educational plan with their counselor, they know that maybe I want to go to Long Beach, maybe I want to go to Dominguez Hills, maybe I want to go to somewhere else, but there's no guarantee anymore, as we all know, with capacity issues. And so a community college student who's already at a disadvantage to make it all the way through this system has to come up with a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, depending on which campus they want to transfer to. So a lot of our partner conversations with Cal State Long Beach are specific to Cal State Long Beach, but if we have to have these same conversations with all of the different places that our students might transfer to. I think the fourth bullet about communication and juggling details, we are all overwhelmed with details, and oftentimes the right people being in the communication loop, it takes somebody to take time to step back and think about, okay, who needs to know all of this? Or it takes Rebecca taking things back to her dean, or me taking things back to my vice president. And oftentimes you don't remember everything. And so going back to this idea of positive presuppositions, we always, I mean, I think Rebecca and I, and every one of those meetings just kind of laugh at how crazy things are. And, you know, here's the things I remember to do, and here's the things that are still on my list of things to do. Duplication of efforts. What I mean by that is that Cal State Long Beach has a bunch of grants. Cerritos College has grants. Oftentimes, those grants have the same goals, and we're going after the same students, or could feed their students. And so because we're implementing these things and they take time, we end up duplicating effort instead of, you know, having the time to streamline and or work together on these things. And then the denseness of our LAOC region is just that our students have so many different options that they can transfer to, because we are heavily populated. So that, you know, that lack of continuity and the fact that we are all on top of one another really is what I think this conference is addressing. And how do we go beyond these campus to campus partnerships and expand and look at things regionally?
Mhm.
We also have barriers for our students because there are promise or priority rules within our system. So some of our teacher track students have priority consideration when applying to Cal State Long Beach. Some don't. It depends on where they went to high school. It depends on where they live. And so that is a barrier to our students. And then finally, curriculum, which Kimberly is going to dig into a bit on how the faculty is partnering within our relationship. But the curriculum, as we want to give more opportunities to students, you know, trying to create courses that transfer and how they feed into that pathway have been, you know, a barrier for our students because they have to wait until these things are created. So all of that being said, I don't want to focus on the negative, but what I am hoping to enlighten with this particular slide is just as you're partnering with your university partners, these are the type of things that we really have to dig into if we're truly going to transform systemically and within our teacher prep system and amplify partnerships in that work. So I am going to toss it over to Kimberly Rosenfeld next.
Hello. Okay. Well, I get to do more of a fine-tuned, fine-grained dive into things. Corinne Martinez was going to be with me on this part of the presentation, but unfortunately could not make it. But I do want to acknowledge that she was part of the conversation to put this together. So basically, as I'm giving you the perspective of the faculty member and the department chair. So as a faculty member, I've actually taught what we call targeted classes. And I've been part of the reflection around those classes and how that's worked. I've been part of faculty development, but I'm really now talking from more of the ed chair perspective. And as somebody who has been involved in maintaining the relationship and maintaining the evolution of things, I think I found that they fall into like two separate categories, right? And the identification of needs and then from need to action. And so what I mean by identification of needs is, and I'll use our curriculum as an example, that we co-wrote our EDEL 100 and 200 classes. Some of you might know those are the intro to teaching classes and the 45 hours of fieldwork classes in conjunction with Cal State Long Beach back in 1998. And so what we realized, you know, several years into it is that can't be a static thing. It's not like we aligned, we wrote them together, now we're good to go. So several years back, we realized that we actually needed to get not the administrators together, not the department chairs together, but the faculty together that were actually teaching these classes. And so we hosted a Zoom session. I think this was actually before we had to have a Zoom session. Maybe it was a conference call pre-COVID. And we kind of talked through what each of our instructors were doing in their classes and the modality in which the class was offered. And as a result of that conversation and that coming together moment, we realized that, we're out of alignment in many areas. So for example, at Cerritos, we had not offered our EDEL 100 class online. Now, again, please contextualize this in pre-COVID, right? And then we realized that Cal State Long Beach was offering it as an online class. So we thought, well, that's an evolution. We need to go through curriculum though, because those of you who are familiar with curriculum, that needs to get stamped and approved. We also realized that there were some differences in the portfolio construction that was happening in our classes and expectation levels. And it just resulted in such a great conversation where we went back and revised our curriculum. Cal State Long Beach did some thinking about theirs. And I think that's a good example of like reflection, right? Like a form of praxis, reflection and then changing based on that reflection and those dialogues. But what does that take? That takes people to organize, get people together, and then get people to show up. Because, you know, our EDEL 100 teacher at the time was a full-time classroom teacher, right? Who's already got a full-time job, teaches our EDEL 100 class for us, and now is being asked to come to an extra meeting. So a lot of that is just recognizing, you know, that this takes a lot of special care and detail to facilitate these discussions, even if they're just a quick hour to work in within a whole semester, that they're precious. And so that's where like the chair comes in to have an agenda, get it organized, get with the chair over at Cal State Long Beach and get everyone together at the table and someone taking some really detailed notes and following up. And that's where the administrative side comes in. We also identified through a variety of things, through grants and through ongoing dialogue with Cal State Long Beach, this real need in special education. And that's kind of one of our babies this year in particular, is to really get movement on that we found that, you know, gee, we have grant after grant that has both STEM focus and SPED, special education. We got the STEM thing down, but we really don't have anything outside of child development that ends at 8 years old to offer our students and hook them early in the field of special education. Because one thing I've noticed, recession or not, COVID or not, whatever is going on in larger society, there is constantly a need for quality, diverse special education teachers. And so it has been through that reflection that again, and discussion that now we are moving in the direction of trying to resolve this, trying to address this need. And we're doing it from the ground up in collaboration with Cal State Long Beach. And so that goes on to my action column there, the ongoing dialogue. And again, we're busy, Cal State Long Beach is busy, but since we have multiple partners, we don't just have Cal State Long Beach, our feeder schools, Cal State Dominguez Hills, we've got Cal State Fullerton nearby, we've got Cal State LA. We really take it, our philosophy is to take it, the onus is on us to reach out to Long Beach. This doesn't let Long Beach off the hook. They need to respond, but we take the initiative to get on their calendars, to do the reminders, because, you know, they too have lots going on and lots of partnerships and so on. So I think that ongoing dialogue needs to be very deliberate, and you need a leader and a point person to get it going and keep it going. Which brings me to the layers of collaboration, because it's not just one person you're meeting with at your partner institution. You know, you might, like I had a meeting with a special education faculty member, but I also needed to have there Corrine Martinez, who is the chair of liberal studies. Then I had to go back to my articulation officer. I had a bunch of questions for him about how to make this happen. And so now you find that one meeting turns into multiple meetings, because to get anything done in this kind of a collaboration, it's lots of people that need to have input, lots of stakeholders, lots of expertise. And so I think giving yourself the time to do that and the understanding and the patience that you're going to get there, but it may just not be as fast as you're hoping, is important. And that kind of ends on my last point about the stakeholders together. And I think just coming from a comm standpoint, recognizing the importance of trying to get as many stakeholders at the table as possible. And just to end on an example with special ed, you know, we reached out to our child development department, who does have a special ed class for early childhood education. We wanted to partner with them. We want to dovetail our class with theirs. It's not a take away from child development or encroach on their area, but it's more, let's pick up from where you end and eventually get a degree or a certificate around this important area together. So I can go on, but I'm going to stop here and I'm happy to entertain questions later, but this is just my department chair faculty lens of how to keep this going, especially around the curriculum piece.
Mhm.
So I'll pass it back to, I think, Rebecca now or Colleen, one of you.
Thanks, Kimberly. So we thought that in order to dig into this, because it was hard to know how many people were going to come into each one of the breakout rooms, that we might, or sorry, each one of our separate little things that you could choose from at the conference. But to really dig into the conversation and not make it be that Kimberly and Rebecca and I are just talking the whole time, that we would take a few minutes to just break into 3 different breakout rooms that Kimberly and Rebecca and myself will moderate to have a discussion around partnerships within your context. So we thought we would just randomly assign everyone to a breakout room. And so if you wouldn't mind indulging us for a minute so I can set those up and break you apart, we'll go into those discussion groups. Did you all get invited to a breakout room? Not yet? Okay. I did randomly, but it didn't seem to do that. Let me try this.
I'm wondering if, do you have to be the host?
Oh, here we go. I got it. I got it. Yeah.
You got to hit open all rooms. There we go.
Now we should be good.
Okay, great, thanks.
So it looks like Rebecca automatically went into room 1. Kimberly's in room 3.
Hi, Jane. We're the only ones in right now. How are you? Oh, I can't hear you. You might be on mute. Oh, here we go. Here comes everybody.
I was in class. I just kidding.
It's because you're in the leaders group, so we're ahead of everyone else.
Nice.
So Courtney, did you graduate from SLO and you're now working in the program?
Yeah, I graduated from a higher education counseling and student affairs program at Cal Poly SLO, and yeah, and now I work also in the School of Education, but with the credential programs.
Awesome.
And she's our liaison. She's been supporting Cuesta students like mad.
Awesome.
I love that like multi-generational model like that, because as much as I think that I might be a relevant 47-year-old white woman, like it's really helpful to have people that are closer in age or, you know, somehow more connected to our students. So I think it's so, I mean, we try, those of us that are older, but at the same time, I think that kind of multi-generational is really awesome.
Well, Renee, you just hit on something that we didn't even touch on, and that is that our students who go through the systems ultimately strengthen the partnership. So with Cal State Long Beach, we have the same thing. We have 2 Cal State Long Beach students that are working in teacher track, and they themselves are the one that are revealing some of those barriers and ways in which we can partner better because they're seeing both of it in ways that we would never see it. So that's super cool. All right. Well, thank you for making it back. It looks like we may have lost a few people along the way, but I hope that you found the breakout sessions helpful. Those Kimberly and Rebecca and I had discussed maybe having somebody from each breakout give a little synopsis of the things that we touched on, just to give insight so you can feel like you were part of all of the conversations. And so fortunately, Letitia Rojas from Pasadena City has volunteered to do ours. So she's going to start us off.
Hi, folks. Yeah, so our particular group talked about a couple of things. One of them being the importance and some of the challenges of working across child development and elementary education. Some of us are further along, or our programs are already intertwined and in the same division or in the same maybe career community. And then for some others of us, they operate separately, right? And so looking, just starting to explore, like, what does it mean to work together? What are some possible avenues to start that conversation and to start working together more effectively? And then we also just talked about just some essential components of a strong program, the importance of creating awareness on and off campus, and what are some of the elements that do that. I really liked your idea of having offering PD, right, as a teacher ed center to your campus, right, because you're working excuse me, with all educators, having just strengthening your partnerships with CSUs, and then also having just an identity, right, whether it's through t-shirts or whether it's through just the communities that you build, creating that community on and off campus. I think that was it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from the other 2 breakout rooms?
Well, I confess that I neglected to ask if someone else would be our spokesperson initially, but we had some really good conversation ideas. I don't know if maybe Rosemary or Lola would be willing to share some of the things we discussed.
You had good notes, Rebecca. You should go for it.
I'm sorry. I meant to put that on, ask someone else to do it, but we actually just summarized some of the unintentional barriers and some approaches to addressing them after giving some really good examples of some of the cool collaborations that lots of people are doing. But some of these have come up before, but looking at capacity, in capacity of classes, impacting of campuses, and also capacity in terms of resources, not in a financial way, but some of the resources that Colleen was alluding to, like time and energy and space, particularly of faculty, to be able to provide extra supports. And is that being something that needs to be discussed more in our different circles? ADT alignment is something that people, I know, has been an issue, especially with the CSUs for a long time. Some of the folks in our group are actually involved in this organization, other organizations, where they're just trying to bring that level of awareness about this lack of alignment. Many courses were articulated prior to the ADT. These are some of the issues that came up, as well as basic skills. I think we all agreed that the new basic skills waiver is something that's helpful for students in a real good way, but we also have to think about the structural piece of it. How does that impact advisors and credential analysts, the volumes that they're dealing with of student needs around the basic skills requirement, and having their transcripts reviewed, and that part of it. We think there needs to be some advocacy on that higher level leadership layer between our different systems. I thought a really cool thing that is it Quest? No, it's not Cuesta College. It's Antelope College that has an actual satellite from CSUN on their campus, which we thought that was all really cool. So they've been able to do a lot of things just because they're physically right there. And those are just, hard things to bring about as a change. But lots on disjointed articulations. Those are not new topics, but we really think that the bringing awareness to the forefront and really trying to work those kinds of things out between our systems would be really key. Did I miss something? Do anyone want to add? Okay.
Okay, well, that leaves our group, which we were, like you, Rebecca, we did not choose the spokesperson. So I don't know if even half of the group is here still, but I don't know if Jennifer wants to jump in, or Richard. I'm happy to do a quick synopsis, but if either of you would say no, and I don't see Jennifer. So
I would say go for it, Kimberly.
Oh, okay, all right. Since I have
Kimberly, I am cracking up at Richard shaking his head at you. He's like, Did you see him?
Yeah, so is Terry. Terry was also in my group. Awesome. Okay, well, we had a really great conversation, and we were fortunate to have Terry Jackson there, who represents the state of California. We also had the LA County Department of Education represented in our group, and Richard really brings a CTE perspective with automotive and industry teachers. And then we had Jennifer, who brought in an early childhood education perspective. So we focused a lot on some of the needs and the barriers. So the needs, we were talking about just the teaching force, ebbs and flows in its need, but in the context of COVID, I think there's going to be a growing need as teachers retire and get tired of the modality of online instruction. And they just don't want to mess with it as a frontline worker anymore, with masks and changing mandates and shifting realities weekly. So that led into some of kind of the challenges we have at the community college level, because we recognize that we are an important pipeline to bring in diverse, high quality teachers into the force. But we have a lot of things that aren't really helping us make that happen. So from a curricular standpoint, we can't get a lot of our classes to count toward GE, or at least we haven't given that a strong enough try. Because, students, if they take a class like EDEL 200, which is our 45 hours of field work, that's great because it will count toward their teacher credential. But anything outside of that, which we don't have a ton of offerings, is like an elective. And so until we can bridge that and make these things count towards the degrees or towards AAT or towards the credential program or hours, it's not giving students a lot of what I call bang for their buck, especially in the context of guided pathways, where it's like get on the path, stay on the path, and get through in 2 years. They don't have time to take anything that doesn't count, so to speak.
Right.
So we talked about those systemic barriers on that level of curriculum. and the fact that our AAT is really, it's limited to elementary ed, but like, what about expanding to an ADT in special education? How come, and what are the barriers to getting that to happen, right? We don't see a lot of that happening because we don't have a lot of undergrad ed courses. Most ed programs, when you go to the university level, are graduate programs. So that's why you go through the liberal studies pipeline, and maybe you can do an ed minor kind of thing. But until we can get a little bit more articulation going on there of courses that we can build up that give them GE credit, that help count toward their degree, and that pipe them into the profession and to the specializations within the profession. These are some of the barriers that we're still facing to get through it and get that all happening, right? These are not created yet. These need to be created. And that's all within the context of most teacher preparation programs at the community college level are not institutionalized. They are grant funded and they run on a skeleton crew. And if you remove the grant funding, we are fortunate at Cerritos, we have Colleen who's institutionalized, my department chair position institutionalized, but we still rely a lot on grants to get our work done. So all of that working together creates an impossible situation when you have a need that's so strong here. So I think it's really nice to have this conversation and kind of, unpack some of these things, because a lot of us are still after this work, we do the work, but we are swimming upstream with it. So that's kind of where we left it.
Yeah. Well, I think the randomness, actually everyone landed where they were supposed to. Thank you so much for attending and contributing. It was great to see everyone's faces. And I think, Renee, we're going into a 15-minute break now, right?
This is our 1 15-minute break for the entire conference, everybody. So eat it up. No, I knew everybody would be popping in and out.